Welcome to Deep Thought. Seeing the big picture and analyzing relationship issues. Now, in my previous podcast, I talked about the four modes of thinking, and one of them was synthesis, right? And that's basically just seeing the big picture and, coming to a conclusion because you're seeing all the parts of it and you're putting everything together, right? Now, this is very important because a lot of times you have some people trying to analyze why stuff isn't happening for them in relationships, and they only see one part of it, right? You know, they're not looking at the whole picture, right? They're not looking at the big picture. Like, you get some people, like you'll get some men, they'll say, what's a good example? They'll wonder why they're not getting the attention from women that they really want, or they don't seem to be successful. And they might even look and say, well, I'm handsome. Why that other guy getting it? That's because they're looking at only one factor in it, right? And that's usually like what a logical way of thinking is. You're not looking at the big picture. You're looking at different parts. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm handsome. I should be getting all these women. But the reality is, if you're going to analyze what's going on in relationships, which I'm using as an example, or any situation, you got to look at everything, right? Now, I just use that because everybody can see that's going on. Okay, say the guy's handsome, but it's not working for him. First of all, he's not looking at his social class. You gotta, when you're looking at a relationship issue, right, you gotta look at the social class. I mean, in fact, and my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes from this book called Money Issues in Black Male-Female Relationships, the author, George Sabiro, said any discussion about black relationships that don't take in consideration class is a joke. And it really is. And he was talking about the black community, but that's in any community. That could be in the white community. You got different social classes. You got, and I'm going to get into that in a second, different subcultures, but you got different social classes. So the person might be handsome, but he got to say, does his social class match up with the rest of the neighborhood? Right? You know, he might, what if he's a handsome dude, but for whatever reason, he was able to move into an upper class neighborhood, right? Where they have certain norms. And, you know, even though in general he would be considered handsome, women are choosing more for the social class. Or sometimes you might get a situation, and I've seen this happen, where you get somebody, for whatever reason, they have to downgrade, maybe move into a poorer neighborhood. And the guy's a middle class. He grew up middle class, got middle class sensibilities, but for whatever reason, he's in a poor neighborhood. For whatever reason, sometimes some people might do that because there was a good house and they adventurous. That's how a lot of gentrification started and everything, right? But the women in the area ain't feeling why. Different social class. So if he's going to question it, he can't just say, well, what's wrong with them? I'm handsome. It's like, no, because they looking at you for social class. You got to look at the big picture. And then when you talk about the neighborhood again, what's the environment? Is the environment conducive to you meeting women? Now, I was reading somebody's blog last night, and they were talking about if they, all of a sudden they're married, if all of a sudden they were single, the dude was like, I'll join a yoga class. It's a target-rich environment. He likes yoga, and there's plenty of women there. And he likes the values that women who take yoga have. And so he say, look, in 6 weeks, he probably have another woman, right? But that's the environment. So you got to look at the whole thing. So, Mr. Handsome dude wondering what's up. One, he's in, he got to look at the social class, and then he got to look at the environment he's in. Because you get many like, and I get this in coaching and maybe in comments on my relationship channels. Sometimes if somebody's having trouble meeting the mate that they want to meet, sometimes it's better that they change wherever they're at. Like if I want to meet a certain type of person personally, right, I already know where I need to go. And it's not where I currently live, right? So you got to look at the environment, and then you got to look at the subculture of where you live, right? Now, if say Mr. Handsome, he's like wondering why, but then he's more, let's say his religion, and religion plays a part too. But I'll just say, I won't get into the religion part just now, but I'd say his personal philosophy is more, let's just say, for example's sake, let's say the culture thing, he's more of a hippie, or a hipster, or, one of those dudes, he might have long dreads or locks, and he might dress more artsy and stuff, right? But that's his personal culture. And yeah, he's still handsome, but then he might be in a place where the culture of the area is more conservative, right? I remember when I went out to San Diego and I had my friends drive me around different parts, and they got some, they drove me through this one part where it was dominated by surf culture. You had all these surf shops and people kind of chilled and everything. And then another part that was dominated more by holistic types, right? You got to look at the culture. So you got to look at the big picture. Where are you at? What's your culture like? And then the religion piece, right? You got to look at the whole picture. Okay, how is your religion affecting who you're meeting? If your religion, requires you to look a certain way, behave a certain way, it might not be conducive with the environment that you in, the social class, the subculture, anything of that nature. See, you got to look at the whole picture. See, a lot of times we don't do that. Like, and this is a criticism I have of people who look for dating coaches, right? This is a criticism I have. A lot of that stuff ain't going to work in certain environments, because you got to switch up for the environment. And see, a lot of guys think, it's just because you're handsome or something. You can be very handsome, right? And that's why I like using that relationship example. Like, I know a young lady, if a dude doesn't look like he spends 8 days in church, she ain't going to mess with him. And then, one of her friends, if you don't look like that, you entrepreneurial and clean cut, she ain't gonna mess with you. She don't care what your bone structure look like. So you gotta look at the whole picture. You gotta think about that. What are you presenting? Where are you at? Who you dealing with? The environment. You gotta look at all of that, right? So if you analyzing a particular relationship issue, right, you gotta say, all right, hold up, let me see what's going on over here, right? You gotta look at their economics, how's that affecting them? You gotta look at how they dressed. How's that affecting them? I mean, everything. You gotta look at every little thing, and even how they were raised, their value system, everything. You gotta look at every little thing. And now I said this, I used the example of relationship issues, but that's anything. You gotta look at everything. If you a business, let me use a business example. Something I would usually do on my business channel. If you want to say you open a vegan restaurant somewhere, right? Or a health food store, right? And then you end up closing in 6 months. You can't figure out why. That's because you weren't due diligent in analyzing the whole situation. Are there any indication that people in that neighborhood would support a vegan restaurant? I mean, and you got people who sell companies that do demographic studies on different neighborhoods, and they'll tell you exactly what's there. They'll go through census figures and everything, right? So do you have that there? Are you looking at the big picture, or you just put something there and then ask, well, is anybody going to actually support it, right? You got to ask yourself. Or if, say you have a retail store and all of a sudden your traffic stops, right? Now, somebody, like I have a local mall that's losing a lot of stores, right? And it actually has a Sears in it, right? And, they having some trouble, so this store might close. In fact, they've been talking about the store closing for about 5 years now or something, right? And you have a little small store that's in there. And all of a sudden, you stop making money. People stop buying stuff there. And you're thinking to yourself, Now, somebody not looking at the big picture will say, okay, well, maybe we need to change what we sell in here, or maybe we need to move stuff around. But instead of looking at the big picture and saying, oh, we don't have, people ain't buying as much because there's not as much traffic in this mall. And there's not as much traffic in this mall because a main destination, an anchor store, closed. So that's how you analyze it. You got to see everything that's happening, right? Yeah. I mean, you can even bring that back around to relationships. Like say everything else is, take that handsome guy again, and he's in a certain social environment, but he's still not getting any attention. And he might look at himself like, what am I doing wrong? And he might not be doing anything, but he might be in a social environment where you got somebody like a male or a few males who are considered more sexually attractive by the women in that circle. So they monopolizing the lion's share of those women, not leaving much. And in fact, that was a situation I faced in college, right? You had a few men monopolizing most of the women, right? You had a few men monopolizing. Like by the time you got there, it's like, these guys were catching these women before the school year started. So by the time you show up, these women already done did something with the main guys. And you like, damn, I'm competing for a few women there. So that makes a big difference, big old difference, right? So you always got not just look at one part of anything, but look at everything, the environment, anything. That's studying anything. So anyway, something to think about. I'll get back with y'all later. Peace and blessings.